Well, welcome to 360 Yield Center. What a pleasure it is to have you come in and sit down. Maybe your feet kind of get tired of the show. That's what these benches are for, so feel free to come in. We're going to talk about things that we believe in here at 360 and how we design technology. I would just say it this way. This is a picture of me on April 9th, first day of planting beans. It's early. It's beautiful conditions. I had no idea what the spring of 19 was going to be. If I'd have known, I'd probably been pretty upset, pretty tight. But at this stage, everything was perfect. So how do you and I design farming systems to work with adverse weather and Mother Nature? You got to think about it. So you can sit here and say, well, Greg, I'm all cover crops, no-till, or I'm full till, or I'm vertical till, I'm strip till. It makes me no difference what you're doing. Are you in a position where your farm can be profitable, drought, flood, or perfect? And so that's the things I'd like to talk about, how we design planter technology or spray equipment to take us to the next level. Because I think of it this way. In corn yield, there's 4 things that drive corn yield. There's ear count or plant count. How do you and I manage a planter early? How many ears do we actually get? What population are we dropping? What do we expect to get? So I want a high ear count. I for sure want a lot of rows around. So when we talk about rows around, we're talking early in that plant's life. We're talking boot high corn, 8 inches. It sets whether it's going to be 18, 16, or 14 around. How you and I manage early in our farming operations sets how many rows we're going to have around. Then the length here, we own that. A third of the yield comes from plant health and nitrogen. Do you have enough at the end? If you're putting all your nitrogen on in the fall, once and done, do you have enough nitrogen to carry you through harvest? And that's a question I often think about, because I own this one. Every kernel in length is worth 6 bushels. So if I blew off, 6 kernels, that's 36 bushel that I lost. And then there's always that question about, well, how was the end of the harvest? As we get closer and closer to harvest, what was your weather like? Did you have a lot of sunshine? Did you have a little bit of wind, not much wind? Did you have great green looking corn? All those things set on the depth of kernel is what we're talking about. So for me, it starts here. It starts right here. How did you and I get the first early stand? Let me put it this way. As each plant comes up and you're in the field looking at it, are they all emerging within, and this is almost impossible to get, are they all emerging within 12 hours of each other? If you told me there's 36 hours between this plant and its neighbors, it's probably going to become a weed. So how the planter runs, how you manage closing, and all those things come into effect here. Did we get a good stand? And so those are the things I worry about on my planters. Here at 360, we're pretty excited. We're saying we believe with a new closing system called Wave, and you can see it running up here in the front of the booth. It's all about how can you and I, as we plant, it also puts on starter. So to me, it's the best of both worlds. It's about positioning starter to win and making sure that every seed has a chance to grow. So let me show it to you. As it's running here, it's taking the bottom half of the right-hand sidewall and it's wrapping it off right over the top of the seed. You can see it up there in front. It's going to envelope the seed. So as we run here, we'll draw it out. So I'm going to take the bottom half of that seed trench and I'm going to totally encapsulate this seed. What am I worried about? Well, I'm worried about when you close here from the top and you push down that we get an air pocket in there. I'll show you what that looks like. Here's a brand new closing system that just come out in the last year in the marketplace. They're planting next to me, so I go out and I take a look at it. And the red line is planting top of the soil. The green line's where the seed is. They close the top. We took an air gun. All of you should take an air gun to the field. Best way I know how to check your planter, take one of those little air tanks out of the shop, blow it up to 115 psi, and you can blow about 4 seeds before you run out of air. And you should be blowing behind your planter because he didn't close. What's going to happen here? Well, the minute you didn't close, so in other words, what happened here is they closed at the top and then they had a cavity and then there's the seed. As the spike starts to come up, and it comes into that cavity. If any sunlight gets into there, because most times what you'll see on that damp soil, by day 3, it starts to slowly open up. The minute you get sunlight of any kind in this cavity, photosynthesis takes place and the spike unfurls. And it just starts to open up. Now you're pushing a rope. So this guy, he just does this, and you dig him out, and he's yellow, and he's partially growing. That's because of your closing system. You weren't in the right spot with it. So we look at wave here, the field right next to it, and we're using wave. Look how we've taken all that soil and we moved it over the top of the seed. So wave is about a closing system, and we're saying we're wanting to get you another 7 bushel because we believe we can raise one more plant. Every plant that puts on an ear should be 7 bushel to you. So if you drop 36,000 and we can raise you one more plant, I'm in the hunt. What else are we talking about in early planting? You look here at that little radical seed. That seedling root coming out of that green seed is the radical. That's the first root out. So when we come in here and plant corn, that first little root out is looking for phosphate. And you say, well, I don't understand. What do I need? I got high P1s, Greg, in my soil test. So do I. My farm can test anywhere from 41, 38, 44 P1s on soil tests. Well, why would I worry about phosphates? Because if you have a soil particle here and that little seedling root's growing through it, guess what? You could have high phosphorus. Until that soil is 65 degrees, nothing comes off. It's locked up. So you're planting at the end of April, and your soils are 62 degrees to 58 degrees, and that little root grows through, it's not picking up any phosphorus. What's phosphorus going to do? Get this plant off to an early start. We're trying to get it up. What do I look for starter to do? 5 to 7 days. Faster maturity is why I use starter. I believe it increases yields, but what I really want to do is get it out of the gate. So if we're going to use wave for closing, where would we put our starter? I get really excited when we think about starter placing. The wave starter placing is basically going to be 3/4 of an inch over and a 1/2 inch deeper than the seed. I really like that because that's going to give us much earlier than a 2x2. So the industry and the 2x2 talk a lot that you should also put starter on the seed, a small amount, they say. And then they use the word called relay. And they say the relay effect, if you put a little bit of starter on the seed, and that'll get it off and running until you get over here to the 2x2. The 2x2 is too far away. So as we think about starter, we're saying, well, it's going to give us an early effect. But part of the problem that a lot of guys say, well, I don't know if I'm going to put starter in my planter because it could cost as much as $30 an acre, so let's talk about it. These seeds are 6 inches apart. That's 35,000 in a 30-inch row. They're 6 inches apart. So if you put starter on from row to row, it's going to be $30. Fence row to fence row, all the way. So we said, what if we came in at 360 and we built technology called 360 dash, and every time a seed came out of the seed tube, we timed it so we gave it a shot of fertilizer. So we would do a dash of fertilizer and we would only do a 3-inch. So as the seed comes in the seed trench off here to the side, we're going to give it 3 inches. And that means this 3 inches in the inside has nothing. We just cut your fertilizer bill by 50%. So now we're at $15 an acre. But what about if we would do 2-inch? So on my farm the last 3 years, we've been doing a lot of research. This is at a 10-gallon rate per acre. So it's 10 gallon here where the root came through, but we're not doing anything here in the middle of the ground. And it's 10 gallon here, but this cut our price to $10 an acre. In other words, 2/3. We're only treating 2/3 of the soil before the next dash of product. And so this technology, we've been testing it now. We're on our 3rd year, and we're out on a lot of planters. We're down in Texas planting. We're here moving up. So we got corn this tall down in Texas where we've been working a dash. And so we're taking a look at it. We can argue about yield, but we can't argue that starter always makes more growth. more maturity. I don't know how many times you see agronomists kneeling down like I'm doing, and they say, my starter created. Look how much higher the corn is. We can still say, did it make it? Yes, it's 7 inches taller, but did it make any more yield? Well, we look at maturity later in the season. The starter, no starter, look at the ear over here. So we know that it's ahead. Okay? We know that it's ahead. This is what I would do. If I was in this room and I had one planter, let's just say a 16 row, I would put starter on it this winter. And this is what I would do this spring. Let's pick imaginary date. Oh, April 28th. The whole neighborhood starts planting corn, okay? They light up big time. What would Greg do? I would go out for 1 week. I would put soybeans in. I wouldn't plant a stitch of corn. I would put beans in, okay? And I was gonna, for a week, let's say that's 6 years, I'm gonna say you're gonna get 1,000 acres of beans planted early. So we're gonna plant beans early. Let's say it's mid-April. And for a week, you're planting soybeans, and everybody's talking about you. I mean, they're like, put the seed tender on the road so that the as-grow sign is out. So they know you're planting beans, and then they say, Souter's on beans. He should be able to be planting corn. If on week 2, so on week 2, you start corn, and you add a starter, how much further behind are you than the neighbors here? Not at all. You're no different. You're 7 days faster with starter, so they haven't gained a bit on you. Your corn is 7 days faster, but you added what? I would tell you you added 13 bushel by early beans to your farm average. We've done 3 years of study. So we go out last year, like I showed you, it was on 4/9 we started, and we went hard. We had 1,600 acres of beans in, and then it rained us out. And then we didn't get beans planted again until almost May 1st, and we didn't get finished until June. But why are beans yielding more on early planting? So we planted, I told you we started 4/9. It's all about this, night length. Your shortest night of the summer is June 21st. That's your longest day. Beans understand night length. It drives protein content in the leaf, the length of the night. There's going to be a day in here where the nights get short enough that the bean no longer is going to trigger flowering. So for Greg, that's about May 1st at our farm. So anything I plant by May 1st is going to flower. I had field after field of beans this tall, guys, and they were full of flowers. I'm talking beans 5 inches tall with flowers, due to the fact I'd planted before the solstice. Then the nights are short. They have to get longer before it flowers. So now, let's just pick a date over here. So until July 1st, now we got beans. Let's say we planted beans here on the 23rd of May. They're not going to flower until almost July 1st because the nights are still too short. When the nights get long enough, then they flower. Now I got beans this tall that start to flower. So Greg goes out our farm. I'm putting all of our planters on soybeans, and I say corn. If I don't get any corn in until May 1st, I'll tell you, I'm not nervous. That doesn't bother me at all. The genetics that you and I are planting the last 5 years, they don't seem to move. I had corn planted June 3rd that went 254. Shouldn't have, but it did. And so I watch this with interest. So we're going to plant beans early. So starter on the corn planter, if you own 2 planters, put one on beans and one on corn. So it still begs the question, does this make yield? And that's the question we always talk about. I believe it does. So this is our dash study, no starter, 5-gallon continuous. We were using 15-gallon continuous. Then we went to 3-inch dash and 2-inch dash. In the last 3 years, I watch it with interest. I cannot explain it. The 2-inch dash has won every trial. So we're coming in here and we're putting that 2 inches. We're putting the seed off over here. I think it's a high concentration of starter. I don't know if I can answer it. I started out saying I want to yield the same as continuous. That's all I ask. Because if I can save you 50%, that product becomes a no-brainer. What else though? Let's talk about the second highest input for you is nitrogen. First is seed. Seed costs you the most per acre. Then comes nitrogen. And so if we can manage our N, it has a huge impact on us. For the last 8 years, I've been putting nitrogen on at the planter because I realize if we ban nitrogen, we're going to get a lot better success than if we broadcast. So this is a corn-on-corn field. You can see Greg planted it. And so we have the same amount of nitrogen broadcast. Over here we band it with the planter. You can see the leaves are talking to us, and they're basically saying we're running out. And you can see it on the corn. But it's the same amount of N. It's just put in at different concentrations. Let's talk about it. Out in your field, if we come in here and we broadcast nitrogen, let's just say 120 pounds of N per acre, and we got a lot of residue out here. These guys are in every one of our fields, and these are the good guys. I really like these guys. These guys are called microbials. They're the good bacteria, and there's a lot of them. I worry continuously about these guys. So when you're doing cover crops and you're managing your soil tilth, you're going to increase the population of the good. What do these guys do for you? Well, they eat residue, and they also give you free, that word resonates with me, free nitrogen. That's better than garage sailing. How much? A lot. 80 to 100 pounds through a growing season. So if they're going to give you 80 to 100 pounds free, I'm in. If you told me you come out in the fall and you put all your anhydrous on at one time, or all your nitrogen at one pass, I struggle. I don't understand how that works. So if the soil is going to give you 100 pounds free and you already put 225 pounds on, you paid for it. You wrote a check. If nature gives you 100 pounds free, you still get it. Now you got 325, but you wrote the whole check last fall. So I'm saying we need to come in and ban nitrogen. So if our seed's here, if we ban nitrogen, yes, these guys will eat on it as they break down the residue, but they can't eat it all. And all we're seeing here is in a corn-on-corn field with a lot of residue, the microbials were breaking that residue down, and they ate enough that the plant went under stress. Over here where it's banded, it's concentrated. I just put it this way, it's 2x. We've worked on this a lot. A band of nitrogen is 2x. So if you're putting on 120, 60 pounds on a band equal it. I like those numbers. That works for me when I'm buying it. And so those are things that we talk about. So microbials are, how many do you have? A lot. You have 36,000 pounds per acre of good bacteria. Let me write it down so you understand it. So on every acre you own, you have 36 1,000 pound steers out there walking around on your farm. If your soil pHs are 6.4 to 6.5 pHs, this is what your herd size is. So if you tell me, if you walked in here and you said, Greg, boy, we've been putting on a lot of lime, and we put on 2.5 ton this fall, I'm going to be honest with you, I would never say anything to you, but I'd look at you and I'd put you in a different class. I'd immediately say, because you're telling me your ton rates, you know, your pHs are doing this. They're 6.4, 5.8, you pull the trigger, now we're 6.5. If you do this, how many steers do you think you have per acre? It's embarrassing. You go down to 1 steer at 5.8. You only have 1,200 pounds of the free nitrogen generating guys. So you must maintain healthy soils. You've got to pay attention. So I really like microbials. I worry about it. I know where they're at because on our soil scan, that's what we're testing. When I go out and test with a soil scan, I'm testing how much free nitrogen am I getting. And so those are things we worry about. So these guys are going to eat this whole corn crop. And I like that fact because this corn crop makes me tick. There's $100 of free fertilizer in that crop per acre. Now it takes Mike and his team 5 years to eat a corn plant from the top to the bottom. It takes him 5 years. And so that's very simple math. That means you get $20 of fertilizer an acre out of a corn-on-corn field. I'm going to show you some technology where we can do it in 2 years. So I challenged our engineering team and I said, Greg doesn't want to wait for my $100. We went out and we put chain roll stalk rolls in the deer case and gearing off corn heads, and we're saying all we're going to do is we're going to make small pieces. Not confetti. I'm not wild about confetti. You make confetti and your road cleaners next spring can't clean it away out of the seed feed. And if you get confetti down in your seed trench, you are going to misfire. with seedling blight. So I want pieces. Remember, Mike and his team can only come in from the ends. They can't eat through the rind. So we're going to take, and with chain roll, we're going to work on all that side of that stalk. We're going to fracture it. What do you think the black are that you see there? That's Mike. That's my 36,000 pounds, or my 36 steers, are all the black in there. Now this picture was taken in January, so you realize it's frozen, so Mike's not living right now, but next spring he's going to light up and he's going to come to life. So if we can ban nitrogen, and I don't understand, why wouldn't we put it on the planter? Because the planter pass is free to Greg. Every acre I have is going to get planter run over it. So if I can figure out how to position nitrogen in a band, and it doesn't cost me anything to have it on the planter when I'm going, to me that's ultimate. Now you notice we got an 8-inch wheel here and it's spring loaded on purpose. I'm going to put our nitrogen pretty shallow. I'm going to use nature. If I was going to put that disc 2 inches into the ground, you realize the downforce I would need. If you put 2 discs, I had a grower call me and he said, man, I've got June soil, no-till here in Ohio, and your discs are only going in 1/8 of an inch. I'm not worried about it. I'm dragging a chain. If I could force those discs in, what would happen to his planting depth? It's going to come up. You say, well, I got delta force. I understand delta force. You can only got so much force before the planter starts to come out of the ground. And so I want this to be, I want seedling depth first. I want this to be 3/4 of an inch. So we'll put the seed in here. Remember, we got this little seedling root. We got a starter on it. So I'm going to put my starter, nitrogen, 3 inches on each side, only 3/4 of an inch deep. Because once this plant starts to grow, it's going to put on a crown root. Crown's right there. The minute it starts raining, my nitrogen starts, the dilution starts to take place, and it starts to migrate down through the profile. I like this. Now as the root comes out, they all grow. That's the way God created them. They grow down to a 35-degree angle. That's just the way nature is. Now remember, this root, it doesn't come out for a long time. You have 8-inch high corn out in your field. Guess what's happening? You're living off of mama seed, okay? When the starch runs out, you better hope the first crown roots are ready to go to work. Because when the food source stops here, you have to have crown roots. At the same time, this is all happening at 8-inch high corn, V5. It's also selecting how many rows around am I going to be this year, 18, 16, 14. Any day that we stress corn, we're in trouble. Soybeans, intentionally stress. Corn, every day has got to be a happy day in cornfield. Otherwise, we're going to set on less rows around. So when I look at nitrogen, and I'm saying I got these baby crown roots coming out, I want them to grow through what we call the sweet spot. And so the sweet spot is in. Now, Mike and his team are in here, and they're eating. They're eating all this residue on the top, but they can't eat it all. And your plant's going to have enough. So you can see here our bandit units running, and you can see the hose tube guide there sitting down in that little 3/4 inch trench. And so it's putting nitrogen right in that spot. So now when the plant starts to grow, we got a band of nitrogen very easily ready to go. You look at the yield response, and it makes a lot of sense to me. So in 2-year study, we're averaging 6.2, same amount of N now. Broadcast versus band. Broadcast versus band. Look at the corn on corn. You say, well, why is the yield so much higher? Well, a lot more residue. Corn on corn residue, you're going to eat a lot of residue here. And so I look at this, and it starts to make a lot of sense to me, and I say, well, what would be the return? So we have these little ROI calculators. Everybody in the white shirts in the booth have one. You can stop and say, hey, I want to put my corn acres in. So if you've got 825 acres of corn, put it in. You've got a 12-row planter, 16-row. But look at the return. So they cost you $300 a row. He put 16 on for $4,800. Return is $22,000 year one. I can just tell you at 360 how we price product. We price it to where you can return investment year one. If I can get it. I don't understand ag right now. Ag is pricing things really, really high. I watch planter attachments in this hall, and I see the, when you're over $1,000 per row, I just start to shake my head. So Greg's going to put on what? 85 units. So with the planter, I'm going to come out. And I'm going to put 85 units of N on, 25 gallon to 28. I always use thiazole, sulfur. I put 6 gallons, so I got 31 gallon per acre. That's a mouthful. What does Greg want to do with that? I'm then going to wait. What am I waiting for? To see if these guys are going to give me free nitrogen. If you did it once and done, you're already all in. But I'm going to wait and say, in June, July, if these guys give me free, my last side dress period, maybe I can use less. So at 31 gallon, I'm going to have to bring a lot of liquid to that planter. That's a high-speed planter. It's running 8.5 miles an hour. We're bringing a gator in, and we're moving nitrogen on the go. So we want the planter to continue. On the right day, you can't plant enough acres. And so you're seeing us here, we're bringing nitrogen, we're pumping it into the front tanks of that tractor, that starter on the hitch. Nitrogen's in the tractor. We're pumping 300 gallon into those 700 gallon tanks. We built tanks in the industry because I want narrow tanks. I don't need my heart to pump anymore, and I do when it already go down the road. So if you tell me our tanks and saddle tanks in the industry are 17.6 wide, you start getting a lot of traffic. That'll get your attention. And you get a lot of friendly waves too. And so I like to have it narrow, and so we're carrying it there. So this gator's bringing 300 gallon on the fly. It takes him about 2 minutes and 50 seconds to pump it off. He uses an air tank and he blows all the liquid out, so if he wants to bring starter the next time, he can. So he'll bring nitrogen 3-4 times in a row, then he'll bring a little bit of starter. We keep the planter really, really light, 30% more acres per day. So now I'm waiting, and I'm saying, well, I got 85 on, that should take me to head high corn. Now we've got a lot of our spraying done on corn and beans in our farm, and we're ready to come in with Y drop. So we're going to come in with Y drop, and we're going to put it right beside the row on top of the ground. And that gets a lot of people nervous, and they're like, man, Greg, I'd like to see mine at the 15-inch mark of a coulter. Well, we've done a lot of research. We know that if we bring nitrogen, and this time I have sulfur in it too, so for Greg, I'm going to bring in 100 units. I'm going to bring in another 100 pounds at side dress. I'm looking for 180 to 185 total. And my yield goal is 250. I want to be 0.7 pounds of N per bushel. If I can do that, I'm in the money. 350 corn, believe me, my farm family, we can live. If I'm 0.7 pounds of N, we can make money. So we're going to put it right here. And you say, well, what about dry weather? Well, anytime you have a dew and you're in a cornfield, you ever notice how there's mud down around the bottom of the stalk? We call it stem water. So all the leaves, they run that water from the dew down the stalk, and it makes a ring of mud. And so we can sit here and put nitrogen on top of the ground, and we get an instant reaction into the corn plant. Compared to colder, I just tell you, look at that blue side dress bar over there. If we put nitrogen beside the plant versus in the center of the row, in 3 years of national studies, we're same amount of N, we're 6 bushel more. That only comes from the fact we get more nitrogen in the plant. So you look at the return on investment calculator here, big numbers, and you can see these are the kind of numbers I get excited about in ag. So for Greg, though, we wait till a little later. You can see we got the deer. We run a Hagie, and we run a deer in our farm. The deer's in 6-foot-high corn. You can see it waving through. We're putting nitrogen on to finish the race. And so there's been some tremendous yield advantages to banding nitrogen at the right spot at the right time. I'll give you an example. This young man was all once and done for years. He come in here and he put 75 pounds on at the planter. Then he weighed. He came back and put 105 on of Y drop instead of 255. So for years he was putting on 255 pounds one load. That's a mouthful. So we actually, I told you at the beginning, 360, I want to put less on and raise more corn. Less inputs. I'll just tell you, on our farm, in the last 5 years, we've cut our costs by 44%. When we went in and we got aggressive and we cut out the fat and we said, we've got to get better at what we're doing. This is how we do it. 180 pounds of N raised 241 bushel of corn. So those are things that we talk about here in the booth. I'd like to switch gears just a bit. A lot of us think we're corn raisers, we're going after yield. What you really are is you're sunlight harvesters. You think of a corn plant, 16 leaves on a corn plant, and they're out here. And what's their job? Their job is to take sunlight. So let's just draw it out here. And I like to get sunlight in as low as I can into the plant. So we talk about vertical leaf corn, and then it starts to turn to what we call horizontal. But the sunlight, the deeper I can get it into the leaves, as long as it never hits the ground, I'm in. And so we talk about the right hybrids at the right population. So we're planting 38,000, and we're talking about vertical leaf corn, so we get the sunlight in deep, because every one of these leaves is a solar collector. My fields are 97% dark. You're almost scared to go in the field with me, hit head-high corn. And so when you walk in there, so if we can harvest sunlight, what's the return? I put this light bulb. This is a 75-watt light bulb. At Greg's farm in Central Illinois, we calculated this out. This is science. The energy that this plant designs in full sun, so on a bright sunny day at Greg's farm, the energy that this plant consumes will light a light bulb for 8 hours. Every corn plant in Greg's field on a sunny day has enough energy that it can light this bulb for 8 hours. You think about that. 35,000 light bulbs per acre out there burning. So how do you and I treat this corn plant? What's the value of a leaf? Because I worry. I get a lot of questions about it. They say, well, Greg, do you use fungicides? You know, I get that question all the time. Yes, we use fungicides. Are you going to use them next year? Yes. Absolutely. It's already budgeted in. And so if we look at the value of a leaf, we went out and did a simple study. Because I will tell you, for years I've said, a third of this yield comes from the top 3 leaves. Flag leaf and the next 2 fill a third of the ear. And you think about that and you go, well, wait a minute. Every kernel is worth 6 bushel to you. If you and I knock off 6 kernel length, 36 bushel loss. What knocks that off? Plant health and nitrogen. And so if you and I are mismanaging our leaves, so we went in, we cut off the top 3 of a scissors on a row. And we're going in on the check row, it made 263. Now this is not irrigated corn, this is dry land. And we cut off the top 3, and you can see here how they look. You can see the flag leaf around the tassels off, and the next 2 are off. Look at the loss. Those 3 leaves missing cost us 70 bushel. So when you and I see this, do we get nervous? You're walking in your field and you see gray leaf coming from the bottom up. You see aphids at the top slicking them. You see northern leaf blight. You see rust. How you and I respond has a tremendous impact on what we harvest. So at 360 we said, well, we know where the most leaf openings are, so we come in and we're spraying from the bottom up. So you take a leaf, the way God created corn, the most of the openings are on the bottom side of the leaf. So we're spraying from the bottom up. So my program is, we're using DeLauro, new product from Bayer. I love it. It has been a real yield generator for us. So we're in here at 10 ounces of DeLauro. I always put in an insecticide. So this cost me $11 an acre. An insecticide cost me $5, so we're $16 an acre in cost. Why do I put insecticide in? Well, I get really worried about, I'll tell you here in a minute. So you see a spray in here. So I'm cutting out this seed plot. This is a research plot. I've sprayed this plot twice with fungicide. V6, knee-high, and again right before tassel. I was in here and we sprayed it twice. Now that's an exception. Most of my acres get 1 pass. Look at the corn across the road, plant at the same time. Looks like it's ready to harvest, right? What do you think the moisture was here, high or low? Low, 26%. We're cutting almost silage corn, and so it almost made 300 bushel. It was running in the 290s as we were cutting through here. It looks like it would be 30%, but you watch the health. You know, when you talk to Dave Hula, so Dave Hula went out and he raised 616. Now the reason I like that, he planted an 1197 Pioneer. This is 1197 Pioneer. So if this made 300, and it did, I'm only half as good a grower as Dave. I mean, you look at 616, and so he's spraying his corn twice like this. He says, Greg, when I cut my corn, it looks like silage. and I believe him. And so when we talk about sunlight as a solar collector, how did Dave raise that? So he's out there in Virginia by the James River. So, you know, you look at 616 bushel corn, you say, is that even possible? Well, Dave will tell you he believes he can go to 800, and I believe him. And I look at this at interest. It's all about sunlight. What did Dave have this year in Virginia? They had a drought. What happens in a drought? You have sunlight every day because there's no rain clouds. So for Dave, he's much better if a drought because he's got irrigation. He irrigated an additional 16 inches. And so I get really excited when you think about what the sunlight capacity is, and you look at this yield. It came out of the fact that he flat out had every day full of sun. And that's the kind of things we talk about. But if I'm going to spray fungicide, I must be aware that fungicide takes out the natural fungus that kills aphids. So when you spray a fungicide on your corn to manage leaf diseases, you're also taking out nature's way of controlling aphids. So that's why I put the Hero in there. So I come in here and I just put Hero in on the first pass because I know I don't want to come back and spray it again. But at the end of the day, the yield's worth it. I mean, you look at the yield here, and I get excited at looking at 27 bushel corn response. So we had $101 gross. I had $21 of cost. I put $80 an acre in by simply taking care of my yield and what we're looking at. So those are things that excite me. Two quick things. You see here that we got a yield saver running up here in the front corner. I like inventing simple little things. I used to watch corn go through the deck plates on corn heads, and I couldn't ever stop it, so I put yield saver in. I'm interested in saving, so these white flags are an OEM head. This over here had the yield saver, 83% savings. Those are things that I get excited about. I'd say this. For you and I, this year, we must manage our family farms to understand we don't know what nature's going to give us. I had a lot of growers in here say, man, I think it's going to be really wet, Greg. I don't know that. I'm not going to say we're going to be really wet in Illinois. We don't know yet, do we? But do you have a farming system that you can manage wet, dry, hot, cold? I mean, a lot of those, you and I make those decisions. I just say it this way. If you're going to go out and plant some really cold soils, you need to be really, really careful. Make sure you got it figured out. But closing attachments, banding nitrogen, being able to come in late season and react to the year you had, plant health, those are things I get excited about. So if you have questions, we can try to take them. I know a lot of you walk up in the middle, but I'm excited that you're here. I want you to think about how you farm, whether it's cover crops or not, no-till, full-till. You know, you're covering nationwide here at this show. You must figure out how you can weatherproof yourself. In 19, we survived it, didn't we? But we learned a lot. So I encourage you to think it through.